Welcome to BizAfrica. I'm Penina Karibe. The Eastern and Southern African Trade and Development Bank, popularly known as the PTA Bank, has approved for China, the first non-African member state, to increase its shareholding in the bank. The bank has also invited South Korea, Belarus, Brazil and Malaysia, as well as other African countries interested in joining the bank. President of the bank, Admasu Tedese, told Xinhua News Agency at the sidelines of the bank's 29th annual general meeting in Addis Ababa that the move followed a decision to increase its capital. China currently holds 6% of the PTA Bank. Tedese did not disclose how much China would increase its shareholding, but said that the new shareholding would not increase China's stake by very much. South African fast food restaurant operator Famous Brands has said it will buy a 49% stake in the restaurant arm of UAC of Nigeria to bolster its presence in Africa's most populous country. The value of the deal has not yet been disclosed, but it says it would give it a wider footprint in Nigeria, where it has operated for the past 11 years through license and franchise agreements. UAC Restaurants has 165 franchise restaurants in Nigeria, with 57 of those in Lagos that include the popular Mr. Biggs brand and Famous Brands. South Africa companies are increasingly looking to fast-growing sub-Saharan markets as growth in the home market slows. Famous Brands operates these Tears and Wimpy fast food restaurants in South Africa. Now, for hundreds of years, Cape Town in South Africa has relied on the sea for its food and its fortune. There's still plenty of fishing in the region, but as CCTV's Travers Andrews now reports, some of the best catches are way inland.
Fish were once plentiful, but the catches these days are far lighter, thanks to overfishing and environmental change. One answer is land-based fish farms. At this facility, the largest of its kind in South Africa, 700 tons of rainbow trout are being harvested. Dramatic evidence of how fish farming is making its mark, and it's finding a ready market.
People want to eat more fish, people want to be more healthy. They tend to eat less red meat and more fish and chicken. So I think that's driving the whole aquaculture industry globally.
Recent statistics show more fish are being farmed globally than cattle, and South Africa is among the pioneers exporting much of its farmed fish. Experts cite various benefits of farmed fish.
You can also supply fresh fish year-round. You can have traceability in place. It's also safe, so the fish are produced in a clean environment. There's no pollution or toxins in the water, which make it healthy to eat.
Demand in South Africa has been booming. Industry experts say Africa also has huge potential for fish farming. Not everyone's a fish fan, of course, but more and more people are. Many for health reasons, many because it simply tastes that good. South Africans are looking more and more for sustainable sources of food, and the fish that's been caught here are playing a big role in meeting that demand. Travers Andrews, CCTV, Cape Town.
African exports to the U.S. have enjoyed preferential tariffs for more than a decade. That deal, which has provided duty-free benefits for many products in 37 sub-Saharan African countries, is set to expire in 2015. That's prompting Washington to rethink its trade relationship with the continent's changing economies. But upgrading the African Growth and Opportunity Act, known as AGOA, is not a done deal, as our Washington correspondent Daniel Wrenches reports.
Samuel Demise inspects one of his prized shipments of coffee beans from his home country of Ethiopia. This year, his business, based in the port city of Baltimore on the east coast of the US, will import 18 containers full of coffee worth $100,000 each. Samuel has gained a competitive edge here because of the duty-free benefits of the African Growth and Opportunity Act.
Yeah, the growth is enormous. The only thing is, if you do everything right, if you source good quality, and there is always opportunity. The market is there. The only thing is you have to bring good quality product to the United States and the rest of the world.
Samuel learnt the trade growing up with his father's business, and since establishing his own in Baltimore in 2006, has earned a prized reputation from hundreds of high-end US coffee roasters in the world's largest coffee-drinking nation. 400 million cups a day. But in Washington, there is expected to be a fierce political conflict between Republicans and Democrats over their budget negotiations in the coming months, leaving some room for uncertainty about whether they will be able to renew AGOA in time for 2015. Samuel Demise is worried about the consequences if they don't.
It could increase like by 10-15% of my cost, which is I might not be even in a competition, because like right now we've got a huge advantage on duty free, so I can lower my cost by 10-15%. So I might gonna be out of the competition. It's gonna be a scary thing for me.
Supportive lawmakers recently travelled to Demise's home country of Ethiopia for a forum designed to reassure African countries of Washington's intention to recommit to AGOA. And they came with the endorsement of the president fresh from his Africa trip.
Now we have an opportunity to unleash the next era of African growth together. As we work to renew AGOA in 2015 and continue integrating Africa into the global economy, we also want to make sure that the benefits of Africa's growth reach all parts of the society.
The shape of that reformulation of AGOA will also help to establish whether it will be possible for Samuel to realise his ambition to broaden his imports from other East African countries such as Kenya, Tanzania and Rwanda. His backup plan, if AGOA falls down, would be to refocus on importing from coffee producers in Central America, which is marketed strongly here. Businesses need certainty, and supporters of AGOA are calling for it to be extended for 15 years to engender real confidence in the future of US-Africa trade. But while lawmakers here in Washington are fighting over other issues, and while the Obama administration conducts a review of the efficacy of AGOA, no one can yet provide the absolute certainty about the future shape of AGOA that they currently need. Daniel Wrenches, CCTV. Washington.
While you're watching BizAfrica, let's take a quick break. We'll be back with plenty more.
An ancient land, ready for change.
And I'm proud to be a woman.
How this all works.
Tradition and modernity.
I'm strong to prove that we can do it.
Give them life.
Hopes and challenges. We bring you the faces of Africa. Culture Express. See the world in color. BizAsia. Asia means business.
At 1:30, welcome back to BizAfrica. Let's turn to Libya now, which has struggled to resume oil exports, which have been reduced to almost a trickle by protesters as an attempt to strike a deal with the government collapsed and uncertainty prevailed over solution. The government has been locked in talks with feuding tribes, militia and protester groups over the past 2 months. Output has so far collapsed to just a tenth of Libya's maximum capacity of some 1.5 million barrels per day. Sources close to the matter say that protesters in the east, which produces around 2/3 of its output, have reached a deal to reopen export terminals from Monday. Those particular protesters are, however, demanding a number of conditions to be met within 3 months. Talks with protesters in Libya's west, which produces around 1/3 of its output, look slightly positive, though government officials say they remain cautious about the prospects of an immediate field reopening. We now turn to Mariam Bamadi in London for a deeper look at the impact these events are having on the wider oil market. Mariam, thanks for joining us. So protests and strikes at Libya's export terminals and oil fields have brought that country's daily oil production to a grinding halt. How is this affecting the global market?
Well, you know, we have to remember that Libya's output is only about 2 to 3% of global supplies, but now it's about half of one of the 1 million barrels a day that we had back in July, and that's why supplies from developed countries is below the 5-year average that we're used to seeing. With all the instability in Syria and Egypt, investors are very much concerned that it will spread to other oil-producing regions in the Middle East, especially Iraq. That's already happening with ongoing attacks on a major pipeline in northern Iraq, which has very much interrupted more than 150,000 barrels a day of production in the last few weeks. Now, experts say the government should have, the Libyan government that is, should have about 6 months of reserves to keep operating, but investors want Tripoli to ensure long-term security for foreign investment.
Mariam, some reports suggest that a deal has been reached in the east, which produces about 2/3 of their output, to have some export terminals reopened. Are you seeing any significant impact in terms of oil production in Libya on your end, and perhaps any possible effect on the prices?
At this point, you know, global oil prices fell quite a bit today, actually, with Brent crude for delivery in November plummeting to about $109. That's off the highs that we saw last week at about $113. But this won't likely last when major suppliers really start to feel the pinch. That's where we're seeing the problem. The IEA is actually forecasting global oil demand to go up to 92 million barrels a day by next year. The big losers here have been the oil companies, Eni, Total, and ConocoPhillips, just to name a few. In Libya, you know, Libya has contributed to a total loss of revenues at about $100 million a day for both the government and international operators. So we need to see some positive sentiment going forward with these ongoing demands and, of course, demand for oil going up. This downfall has been an unexpected strain for oil giants, especially when many companies like OMV and Total had large stakes in Libya and actually produced more than they had forecast back in 2012 after output actually rebounded from the civil war.
All right, Mariam Bamadi, they're live for us in London. Thanks very much for those insights. Well, let's now move to South Africa, and the Fulham Commission of Inquiry into the circumstances surrounding 44 deaths during strike-related unrest at Marikana last year has been postponed until Wednesday. In a statement, head of the evidence leaders, Geoff Budlander, said his team had not been able to examine the police evidence. At the same time, miners who witnessed the deaths say that they will not give up in their search for justice. The group Citizens for Marikana is demanding that the state pays legal fees for the inquiry, but as CCTV's Guy Henderson now reports, the government has turned down this demand.
For now, their occasional office is the quiet corner of a restaurant. A group brought together by what they see as a travesty of justice. Calling themselves Citizens for Marikana and looking to fund the legal fees for some of the miners that were there that day.
We neither support nor are against any of the parties. What we really want is to ensure that the South African democracy and justice is aided by the Fulham Commission.
After last year's shooting, the president set up an inquiry, which continues, but sporadically. The state pays for lawyers representing its employees, including police. But the country's constitutional court ruled last month it couldn't force funding for all of those on the other side.
In the Constitutional Court's view, this was not a criminal trial, and therefore it seemed to say that the Section 35 rights that accused persons have in a trial to legal defense at state expense would not apply. It did seem to also say that in terms of the equality arguments raised, that it couldn't see how issues of fairness might ground a right to legal representation.
It's a dispute that's led to constant delays.
Sounds of the span clarinet.
And on our visit to an almost empty session, adjourned again.
Now
this latest adjournment has been due to the fact that the Commission now shares this venue with the municipality, which simply need to use the venue for something else next week. But it's constant stoppages like this that are beginning to undermine public confidence in this whole process and has left many wondering whether the full truth will ever emerge.
Could this go on for another year, or what's...
Though that's something the Commission strongly refutes.
There is no question about the truth coming out. I mean, the Commission is very, very thorough in its work. You would also remember that everything that has been done is done legally, respecting the laws of the land, and also ensuring that there is no violation of anybody's rights, as it were.
The man representing the victims, Dali Mpofu, has provisionally withdrawn. He hasn't been paid.
It's very difficult to understand.
That's what this group seeks to change. It's a start, but not much more. Guy Henderson, CCTV, Johannesburg.
Right, let's get some more insights now on this matter from CCTV Sumitra Naidu. She joins us live now from Johannesburg. Sumitra, good to have you with us tonight. Now, the government has been accused of taking sides at the Commission by funding one side and not the other. Do the miners still feel the same? And are there any indications that perhaps the government may come to their support?
Well, you know, Penina, there's growing anger over this issue. Last month, government announced that it won't fund the miners at the Commission. It said that the miners were not on the state's payroll. Instead, they were on the payroll of Lonmin. Lonmin has also declined to fit the bill. And of course, this case did go before the courts, you know, in an attempt to force government to pay for the miners' fees. Of course, the Constitutional Court has dismissed this case, and of course, government isn't going to be paying for the miners' legal fees. There was a march last week. The group called the Citizens for Marikana. They got together with several opposition parties in the country, and they marched to the union buildings to hand over a memorandum demanding that the government help pay for their legal fees. They gave government until the 13th of September, which was Friday. They asked government to meet that deadline, or it will take some sort of action.
And speaking about the Citizens for Marikana group, Sumitra, they have threatened to come up with new initiatives to put more pressure on the government. What are they looking at, and has any announcement been made yet?
Well, we heard at that march that, you know, if government didn't come through and meet their demands, they will look for international pressure. They gave very little detail on who exactly in the international community they will approach, but they did make themselves very clear that they will not back down on this. So they will proceed further, but they haven't really said what exactly they will do. And of course, the deadline just passed on Friday, so they probably will come through with something pretty soon.
And Sumitra, the Wounded and Arrested Miners Council, Dali Mpofu, had asked to withdraw from the Fulham Commission over the lack of funding. Is he likely to be present when the inquiry resumes on Wednesday? And if so, how is this likely to affect proceedings?
Well, as we understand it, Dali Mpofu has actually stepped out of the commission in order to go and look for funding. Of course, he was the one that took this case to the Constitutional Court. He wasn't actually successful there, but he said that he will go and look for funding, and that's the only way that he could continue with these proceedings if he gets the funding. Now, there is speculation that a few political parties may actually come forward and offer some funding, but there's been no confirmation of that as yet. But of course, yes, that hearing starts on Wednesday. You know, there's just been so much of anger and so much of tension around this, and there's been so much of criticism around how this commission has been handled. And, you know, it's raising questions on whether this commission is actually doing more harm than good. So we're not clear whether this commission is actually going to get going on Wednesday and whether Dali Mpofu will actually come back.
All right, Sumitra, thanks very much for those insights. Sumitra Naidu live for us in Johannesburg. Well, it's the first day of trading this week, so let's take a look at how some of the major bourses we track for you around the continent ended the first day of trade. A lot of red we've been seeing here. The Nigeria All Share Index in the red with 0.08%. The JSE as well in the red with 0.10%. The Nairobi Securities as well in the red, 0.82%. The EGX, however, ended in the green with just slightly over half of a percent. Well, let's call it today here on BizAfrica. Thanks for watching. Back to you, Beatrice.